Welcome to SolFul Connections, where we skip the small talk and head right into the soul talk. I'm Amanda Solar, and each week we share the kinds of stories that remind us we're not alone. It's about being human, raw and unfiltered, just real talk. Let's connect.
Connection.
So I am here with Courtney Schulnick, a mindfulness guide, educator, expert, and I can't wait to hear more about why mindfulness is important, how it's important, and really just more about your journey. So,
Yeah.
Courtney, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me and having me here today.
Well, I want to just start by asking what right now is something that you're either reading or listening to or watching?
Yeah, well, I don't get a lot of time to read. I wish I had more time or more space to just sort of curl up in bed and read. But I find that what I'm most listening to is music. There have been studies showing that music, just listening to, doesn't have to be a certain genre, but listening to music can really help us to feel more at ease and can help us to cultivate joy and can also keep the mind really strong. And so there's really very convincing scientific research around that. And so someone who enjoys music and movement, I find myself as I'm doing the dishes, which I do a lot of, being that I have three growing sons and a husband, I find myself in the kitchen a lot. And so I would say that it's music.
Is there anything like any special artist or any special type of music that you like?
I'm going to show my age here, but I am a child of the 80s. So anything from the 80s. But that being said, I love classic rock. And my kids, they've even gotten me into Bad Bunny. So even some of the more current artists, I have a pretty eclectic collection of different artists that I enjoy, but my go-to to feel good, to find a way to connect with more joy is to go right to the 80s.
Yeah. Oh, that it's funny you say that because we used to have Sirius radio in the car. And my kids, when my husband was driving them around, they always said that my husband, it was always 80s on 8. That was
Yes.
like his Sirius
Yeah.
radio station.
Okay, so I'm feeling the connection there. They do. I do want to acknowledge TikTok because sometimes I'll put on an 80s song and I'm thinking back, like my mind will go back to when I was in the car with my dad and maybe he was playing Frank Sinatra, who I happen to like too, but I very much associate it with his music, not mine. But these days, thanks to TikTok, they've brought back some of my favorite 80s tunes and I'll find my kids in the back seat singing to the same song. So
Yeah.
okay, I'm still, the cool factor is still here in their eyes, I think. At least,
I agree between TikTok and Stranger Things because
yes.
my kids watch Stranger Things and they say the same thing like, "Oh, I know that song from Stranger Things."
Yep. Yep. My brother told me I haven't, again, getting back to not having as much free time for watching television, but my brother is a fan of the show and he said, Court, you're gonna love this because it has all your favorite music in it. So it's on my list to do.
It's kind of on my list, but one of my daughters showed me like the beginning of it and I got so stressed out that I was like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. If I'm gonna watch something, especially the times when I have a chance at watching something is later at night. And so if I'm gonna watch something, it can't be something where I'm gonna feel like I'm just in a ball of knots. It has to be something where I can maybe laugh or a romantic story of some sort. So that's
Yeah,
that's sort of my preference.
I'm the same way. So with mindfulness education and guide, can you kind of share your journey to that? I mean, Did you come out of the gate hooked in and locked in to mindfulness, or yeah, like
I love that question. I've never been asked, did I come out of the gate? But if I'm going to get like very, very nitpicky, so to speak, that we are intuitively, from when we come out of the womb, all of us have this innate ability to be aware in the present moment. And that's essentially what mindfulness is, our ability to notice how we're experiencing the moments of our lives. That's how each of us enter this world, but the world as we know it right now is a bit chaotic, and the pace of life is really fast, and there are a lot of demands in our lives, whether it's professionally or personally. And so what often happens is our attention gets pulled into worry of what's to come. Maybe we're thinking about a doctor's appointment and we're noticing some anxiousness in the body, or we have a deadline to meet. And so on one hand, we're caught up in worry of the future. On the other hand, we may get pulled into the past. We may find ourselves ruminating about what was, or something we feel we should have done or could have done better. And in addition to the forward, backward thinking, oftentimes we judge ourselves in the present moment. So to get back to your question, yes, it's our innate ability for each of us to be aware in the present moment, but with the pulls in life, a lot of times we're anything but present. And that's what I noticed coming up for me in the work that I formerly did. I worked as a litigator for almost 2 decades, and my role as a litigator was very demanding. But then I decided, I was married, young, and I was just in the middle of law school. And as I grew older and became more seasoned as an attorney, we decided to have a family. And what I noticed is that as my life became fuller with a lot of great things, it became more and more difficult to balance or juggle what was here in my life. And that caused there to be a lot of agitation, both in my mind and body. I felt like I was constantly on the go and not able to slow down to enjoy all of the beauty that was very much present, but that I wasn't able to be with because of how full my schedule was. So after I had my second son, I noticed that I was grappling more and more with stress and anxiety and trying to find ways to slow down, to be more present for the people that I most cared for, also for my clients, and to really be able to focus and perform well in the workplace. But when I was in the workplace, I was feeling bad about not being present for my family. And when I was at home physically or somewhere with my loved ones, I was thinking about what had to be taken care of at work. And that constant push and pull really just left me feeling exhausted, stressed out, perpetually anxious. And that was the point where I realized this isn't the way I want to live my life. I'm in many ways, I'm missing out on the moments of my life. And at the suggestion of a therapist who I had been treating with for years to find ways to reduce stress, to open up to more joy in my life, she suggested I look into what's known as the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, also known as MBSR. And that was the moment where I was formally introduced to mindfulness. Like, I think all of us have moments in our lives where, whether we're aware of it or not, that we're being mindful. But that was my first introduction in a program format of mindfulness.
So when you were introduced in that formal way, I'm assuming because of the direction your life took, that it was transformative. Like what was that feeling like?
Yeah. So I was very nervous but I had pretty much exhausted all of the resources, coping mechanisms to find a bit more ease and to feel better in mind and body. So there was a sense of like just surrendering, like take me, I'm yours, and a lot of hope that I had done some research on the program. I was at a place in my life where I was very open to it. I had explored other ways to feel better and it didn't really stick. And so I think I went into the program with a really open mind and a sense of curiosity and intentionality, knowing what I wanted for myself and the life that I wanted for my family. So that's sort of how I entered the program. I will, and for those who are listening, who maybe are curious, I want to give voice to the truth that it was a night class. It was from 6:30 to 9. It's an 8-week program. So you meet for 2.5 hours one evening, or you can take a day class. I took it at night because I was working full time, but one evening for 8 consecutive weeks. And I will honestly say that as much as I went in there with an open mind, I walked out feeling more anxious and more stressed out. And it was great for me to really tap into that because that allowed me to realize just how rigid I was with myself, how much I was striving to feel better, but not really holding space to allow myself to be as I was in that moment. And so it was not until the second or third class that I started to notice the transformation, the power of mindfulness.
Wow, that is fascinating because in my imagination, the first class you walked out like, ah.
That's what I thought. And that's what I was so rigidly holding on to. Like, I'm going to go into this class. I'm going to learn how to sit in silence and figure myself out. And I'm going to walk out of here feeling ease and joy. And in many ways, at first, it wasn't that way, but it was the gateway to getting to really get intimate with my mind and to notice how much I was getting in my own way with how much striving and efforting I was bringing into not only meditation and that course or that program, but every facet of my life.
Love that phrase, getting intimate with your own mind. Can you just explain what that means?
Yeah. Yeah. So mindfulness is a really powerful tool in that we can start to understand how our minds work and the ability to get up close. When I say intimate, like to get up close and personal with our minds and also our bodies is what allows us to work with our minds, because oftentimes we're not aware of our inner narrative. We're not aware of what it is we tell ourselves. And many times it's not always rosy. The things that we tell ourselves or how judgmental we are of ourselves or perhaps others, we're not aware of it. And the more we can see our patterns and we can notice our habitual tendencies, that can give us a real sense of agency because we have choice. We don't have to buy in to what it is we're telling ourselves. We don't have to get so pushed and pulled by our thoughts. We can simply just acknowledge them and see them. And we can notice how they play out through the body, but we don't have to take a ride on the train, so to speak. We can just see them for what they are as these separate entities. And then we can choose how to look at a situation or to really perceive something that may be very stressful, but know that there's another way to relate to it.
Can I ask you something that I hear from so many people? When I'm talking about mindfulness or meditation, people tend to respond like this. Oh, yeah, I can't do that because my mind is really busy. I'm someone who thinks all of the time.
Yeah.
And I hear that all the time. What do you say to that?
That is such a common misconception that comes up. And I think, unfortunately, it spooks people away from exploring mindfulness. And I will say mindfulness isn't for everyone, but if you're sort of checking out and not giving it a chance because you think your mind is too busy or too full, then I would say you're in the right place. Like, we want to see just how full and how busy the mind is. It's mindfulness isn't about getting rid of our thoughts or having nothing going on in our mind, like having to wipe our minds clear of any thought per se. We want to be able to notice, sort of like we refer to them as like the top 10 tunes. What keeps coming up? And what are our thinking patterns? And the more and more we can understand and recognize how our inner narrative plays out, the more we're able to see and realize that that is not necessarily the truth. Like, it's what's here, like we're having this thought, but is that an actual reality? Is that what's actually here? So if we're just in autopilot, constantly doing and going about our lives, and we're not giving ourselves moments to see just how busy it is in the mind, how we're so pulled by the things that we're telling ourselves, then we're going to believe them. And our lives are going to play out in many different ways than if we were to just acknowledge. And with that acknowledgement, that recognition, know that we have options, that we have possibilities that we can explore that otherwise go unnoticed.
Would you say that's a good tip for somebody if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, well, I'm really anxious, or I'm really stuck, or things are bad,
Yeah.
or things are overwhelming? Would that be a starting point, do you think?
I think it's a great starting point. And the more and more we can identify what it is we're telling ourselves, we can bring that, getting back to that sense of curiosity that I mentioned when I went into the program. The more we can be curious about it and bring in what we call a beginner's mind, like not thinking that we know it all, that we have a tendency to box things up as good or bad, and we say, oh, this is bad, or oh, my mind is just like that, or it's just like this. If we can come into it with this fresh perspective, we open ourselves up to such possibility that otherwise, when we're so rigid and we're so closed off and box everything, we don't even have a chance to see what maybe is on the other side.
I love that, because it feels like you're saying that we oftentimes say, oh, I'm at the mercy of whatever. This is the way I am. This is the way I was made. And this is my lot in life.
Yeah.
I'm going to feel this way
Yeah.
because that's who I am.
Yes. And we see that. So I teach the MBSR program, the Mindfulness Based Stress Reduction program at Jefferson's Center for Mindfulness. And there are all types of people that take the program. We often see people who have chronic health conditions, and whatever their diagnosis may be, they sometimes come into the program saying, oh, I have a bad back, or, I have this condition. And they become their diagnosis or their condition. But with mindfulness, we can be more expansive. We can see how often we become so pigeonholed or so focused on what's wrong with us, but we can have a more expansive perspective. And when we can loosen the grip, so to speak, we often invite more ease into our bodies, into our minds, into our lives, into our world.
Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of a turn because I'm thinking about the fact that you're the mom to three. Is it three boys you
Three
said?
boys. I'm outnumbered here, and a husband.
And I have three daughters.
Yeah.
So how does this, are they into mindfulness? Like, have they taken on any of the aspects of what you teach?
So my oldest son is 15 and he deeply respects this work. He knows how meaningful it is to me. He actually was a big catalyst, a big motivating factor when he was very young. I think he was maybe 3, and he saw how reactive I was at home and how emotional and how unhappy I was. He was the one who actually said, "Mom, you have to let it go." There was something I was upset about. And I looked at this little 3-year-old Zen, I say he was like my little Zen master. And he intuitively is mindful in his own way. He doesn't practice mindfulness. He respects what it is, my personal practice and what it is I teach, but he says, not for me. But I want to say just his natural sort of hardwiring. He has that disposition, that presence and that curiosity for life. My middle son, who is 11, he is the one who's most apt to sit in like lotus pose or lie down for a body scan. He's my little partner, so to speak, who is open to doing the formal practice. And my youngest is 8, and he just loves to bang the meditation bell. So they all, in their own way, have some respect or interest. But I'd say that I never, as someone who hopes that they really live in a mindful way, I don't push this on them. I think that as parents, when we can demonstrate the ways in which mindfulness supports us and the way it can kind of change the dance in the house or in our lives, that we emulate for them, like why the practice can be so beneficial. Yeah.
So when you were little, um, because you went into litigation, I'm imagining that you were probably scholastically inclined,
Yeah.
is my guess. What kinds of things did you like to do? What brought you joy? What did you hope for?
Yeah. So I always, like you mentioned, scholastically oriented. I always liked challenge, and whether that was academic or sports, I always liked to push myself. So I was competitive and played tennis, brought me joy. Dancing, getting back to music, I've always loved dancing, but becoming a lawyer, no less a litigator, was not something that was ever on my to-do list. It was getting back to that piece I was sharing about striving. And I didn't bring this up yet, but along with the striving, there's, for at least myself, and I think this shows up for a lot of people, where we should on ourselves. Like we say, we should do this, or I would be good if, or, we sort of condition things. And so through the, through the discomfort of being in a place as I got older after college and not knowing what to pursue professionally that would bring me joy, sort of not where to go, I went down the path of going to law school. But the experience and that work is what brought me to mindfulness. The stress and anxiety that I experience is what brought me to mindfulness, and mindfulness in turn it's been a beautiful sort of circular journey, in that I've been able to return back to more joy. I've been able to connect more fully with the joyful parts of my life that in many ways felt like they were put on hold in all of the striving and efforting. So yeah, in a lot of ways, what I noticed brought what very is very clear to me was joyful and meaningful in my life. at an earlier point, it's it's made its way back, but it's been a pretty interesting journey in finding ways to weave that back into my life.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you kept on following the path because
Yeah.
not everybody does that. Um, what do you think people get wrong about you?
So this would be an easy one to have if my I say my crew, my sons and my husband were here. But everyone thinks that I'm always happy and I'm always I mean try to be really kind to all those around me. But I have my moments where there's anger, where there's frustration, where there's moodiness, and unfortunately, I feel like the people I most love they they sort of get the brunt of they see me at my reactive point. So I'm not always calm, and for the most part I am a really happy person, but I'm not perfect, and I have moments despite how committed and dedicated I am to my mindfulness practice and how teaching others mindfulness is my full time career now. I'm a human being and I make mistakes and I say or do things that I'll regret. So yeah, I think that on the surface, people think, oh, you're so calm, you're so kind,
Yeah.
and you're always happy. And for the most part, a lot of it's true, but I'm also human and I make mistakes.
Do you think that you're more gentle with yourself now, this leg of the journey would have been?
Yes, I think that that was a huge piece of the equation that was missing for me, that I couldn't be more kind and gentle towards strangers, towards loved ones, towards my clients. And the one who I was the least gentle and kind to was myself. And so through my mindfulness journey, through the challenges that I've faced, I've learned to be more gentle, compassionate, and less rigid with myself.
So, random question. What's either an unpopular opinion or like a pet peeve that you stand by?
Yeah. So I think you mentioned earlier one that's a huge one that I can't, not me, but just a person in general saying I'm not cut out for mindfulness because my mind is too busy. I hear that a lot. So that's one because I think that there's a large part of the population who could really benefit from mindfulness, and maybe they just discount it because they think that there's something wrong with their minds or their minds are too full.
Right.
So that's one that that comes up a lot, and I think another one that I see come up with a lot of people that I work with in terms of educate teaching them mindfulness is that they get discouraged that when they're if they're in a workshop, if they're taking a deeper dive and they're in a program or they're working one-on-one with me and it's been some time and they notice the mind wandering. Maybe we're practicing a 15-minute meditation, and in that time, they notice that the mind has wandered off to their grocery list, or they're thinking what time they have to pick up their child, or they're wondering if they sent an email out. You know, the mind is going off in 20 different directions in that 15-minute span of time, and they really beat themselves up for it. They think I'm not good at this. And so just to acknowledge that our minds are just like that, that we're conditioned in the world that we live in to get more and more done. And oftentimes our minds just move at warp speed. So to let people know that there's nothing wrong with you, that you're not messing up, you didn't make a mistake in the practice, and that the more and more you can notice how many times the mind wanders and just acknowledge that and come back, that coming back over and over again is really what strengthens the muscle of our mind so that we can choose to show up for this moment.
Yeah, that's a great sentence where you said that we are conditioned
Yeah.
to get stuff done and to be productive. And uh, that requires a lot of thought.
It does. It's the nature of our minds. And a lot of people when they're sitting down to meditate, they think that everything should shut off, that they should just be able to focus on their
Right.
breath, or that there shouldn't be sounds. If there's sounds, and I know you and I were talking about before we started
Yeah.
recording that we have a lot of sounds in our respective environments that, oh, these aren't the perfect conditions. But ultimately, what we're working towards in a gentle way is to bring mindfulness into our daily lives, to see how you know, in the midst of the chaos and everything, how can we practice being mindful? It's not about, I mean, it's nice when we can be in a quiet space and have a formal practice where we're not going to be disturbed. But the truth of the matter is that there's a lot going on in our world, and we want to be able to strengthen these inner resources that are here for all of us so that when we're dealing with a challenging child, when we're dealing with, contentious, if you are working as a lawyer, contentious attorney on their side, or you're just dealing with life as we know it, that you have ways to center yourself, to invite a little bit of ease, and to step out of reactivity so you can respond in ways that are really supportive for yourself and for those around you.
So what is lighting you up today? What are you like looking forward to?
Yeah, so it can go in two directions. I'll say professionally, I'm really excited. I've made some really incredible connections. One being a mutual colleague or friend of ours, Shonda Morales, who she's a psychotherapist. We both recognize how for women in midlife that menopause, perimenopausal symptoms, how they can really wreak havoc on the way that we feel, the way that we think. And I very much saw this play out towards the end of my career as a litigator, the way it affected my ability to perform. And so together we have created a program that we are bringing out into the world to share with other women, and not only women, for leaders of companies, owners who want to support females in their businesses with how to better manage what is coming up for them. But it's not only for them, it in turn affects the business as a whole. So I'm really excited for our connection, for our collaboration, and to support women with mindfulness and ways to help them to keep playing big without burning out. So that's from a professional standpoint, that's something that I'm getting ready to offer with her. On the personal front, I'm really excited for the holidays to spend time, to have more time to slow down and to be together with my family. And we're just at a really fun place in our lives where my kids are still young. They're all still under the same roof. They're not off to college just yet, but it's interesting just to see them really develop into the handsome human beings that they are, and to just watch and see where it is they're gonna soar off to.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I will make sure in the show notes, Courtney, to put any links toward the program that you're talking about, and also to where people can find you, can find information about you and mindfulness.
Great.
Um, because I think you're talking about a tool that can really make life more joyful.
Yeah.
It doesn't, because I think sometimes we think, well, if things get better, or if our life calms down, or if the world gets nicer,
Yeah.
we'll be okay.
Right. And there's all the what ifs, and we don't have a crystal ball, but if we keep living in that way and we don't really show up for ourselves in this moment, then before we know it, time has passed and we don't have ways to really support ourselves to be in a world that oftentimes can feel challenging, but we can also open ourselves up to more joy. We have to be willing to show up for the moments that are joyful, and the more and more we show up for the joy that is very much here all around us, the more it shows up for us. Circling back to what you said, I do believe that it helps us to connect with more joy and also to support ourselves with the moments that can be challenging. So I appreciate you highlighting that. And if anybody wants to learn more or even find free resources that can help them to deepen their understanding of mindfulness, to practice it, whether it's listening to a guided practice or watching a mindful meditation guide by me. There's movement, there's seated practices. You can visit my website. It's just Courtney Schulnick mindfulness.com. And then LinkedIn is also a great place to connect with me. I post, if not daily, several times a week, and usually you can find out the latest and greatest offerings. So that's a really wonderful way to stay connected and to also learn more about mindfulness.
Well, thank you. Thanks for coming on the podcast, and thanks for the work that you're putting out into the world.
Thank you so much for holding this space for me to speak about mindfulness. And as always, it's been a real joy to be together with you.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. Thank you for being a valued part of the SolFul community. Thank you to William Aronson for writing, recording, and producing the SolFul Connections theme song. And finally, always know you're not alone. We are connected. We're all in this thing together. And you and your story are important. Let's just keep on connecting.